Sandy Spain asked me to come and do her introduction today. As many of you know, Sandy had a choice today, and we all think she made the right choice. She's in for surgery today, for some reconstruction. And she said, I had 2 days to choose. And she said, I really wanted to be here for her gross, but I had this other opportunity, and I need to take that. So I think we all wish her well. Haven't heard back any how surgery's going, whether normal symptoms going along just fine. So Herb asked me, or Sandy asked me to make some comments today. I've, as many of you know, been in the educational business a long time. I started in 1968 in Northern Colorado. There was a name that I heard in those early years in terms of two-year college mathematics. That name was Herb Gross. Herb has played a whole variety of roles in his long, illustrious career. One of which was starting at Corning Community College, chairing the math department there. I was joking earlier that he doesn't sound like a Bostonian. Well, that's because he grew up in Corning, New York area. He's been in Raleigh, North Carolina as a teacher in prisons with death row inmates. Has worked for MIT at their Center for Advanced Engineering Study, and has most recently meaning the last 27 plus years, has been at Bunker Hill Community College in Boston, Massachusetts. He's the founding chairperson of the mathematics department there. Has, if memory serves me correctly, the first president of AMAC, is that correct? One of the founders of the American Mathematical Association of two-year colleges. So a long and illustrious career in mathematics. But his comments today transcend the area of mathematics. We really are talking and looking about us as educators and where we are and where we are heading. And his title of his talk is Guidelines for Innovations, Learning from Our Errors of the Past. And I welcome you on behalf of Thomas Nelson Community College. We're pleased you're here, and we look forward to your comments. And I'm going to slide this around a little bit, which is going to make Marlon go crazy. Because we have people on the other side too.
Well, always to form a circle and just all look at each other and just talk. I don't know how you feel about that. It's much easier for me to look at you than to have to look at paper. So when I walk with my wife down the street, I never know whether she's my reward or after a punishment. And I hope to make this as informal as possible, especially in a group of this particular size. I remember when I first went to Corning, I always would tell the people, they could just find 5,000 more people to move down there. They could start a ghost town. I mean, I came from Boston, and I couldn't believe how sparsely popular the place was. Until I was there for about 2 years, and I didn't want to drive during rush hour when the glass doors was letting out. And what it means simply is you always adapt to the environment that you're in. See, a lot of times when I speak to at another community college, I feel like the person who flies over Africa and then gives a 6-week lecture tour of the memories of the natives. I don't know if you ever get that feeling. People just come in and they come out, they have no idea who you are. See, and so the thing is, I come from Boston, I don't know, this is I think the first time I've been to Thomas Nelson, I don't know what's going on there, but what do I know for sure? See, what I know for sure is that half of your students do worse than the other half. See, there's certain invariants in life that don't change. See, your norm may be different from my norm. For example, at Bunker Hill Community College, we have 40 sections of developmental arithmetic, not algebra, not math, developmental arithmetic every single semester. I went to a college in California where they were bemoaning the fact that they had 2 sections. See, now their norm was different marks, but they had as many people below their norm as we have below ours. And I think the problem's going to become even worse in the future because more and more states are having mandatory student assessment. And what's going to happen is now we're going to have 2 levels of developmental students. See, the upper division remedial and the lower division remedial. We're going to get the kids who we always got. Then in addition to that, we're going to have a whole bunch of other kids who, by our standards, are very bright, but they didn't measure up to the overall state standards. See, in other words, if everybody is qualified to start calculus, then the person who's only taking advanced algebra is remedial. And by the way, I hate to use the word remedial when you talk about community colleges. There's an oxymoron paradox here. See, open enrollment, let's put it the other way around. Remedial implies that you lack prerequisites. Open enrollment says you don't need any. Now, if you don't need any, you can't be lacking any. If you can't be lacking any, you're not remedial. Now, what you can have is remedial faculty and remedial administrators. And that's not meant to be a nasty, that's not meant to be nasty. It's not meant to be nasty. What a remedial faculty member or a remedial administrator is simply a person who looks at the kid's academic record and says, my God, we've never seen anybody as fully prepared as you. See? We don't know how to help you. Now that's fine. Just send the kid someplace else. But once you accept them, the kid is no longer to blame. See, if they meet your standards. Now, this is all ad litmus on this. Just because the introduction was so nice, I just felt I had to say something along these lines first. But basically, I think what really happens is that many of us in the community college movement don't recognize how important we really are. So, I suppose what I should do, we have so much time, would it seem out of place if I just ask each of you to tell me who you are and what your position in the college is, and maybe even throw in what one thing you were hoping could conceivably happen by this, in the session today that would help you more than maybe I could tailor some of these remarks more to what's relevant. It's such a small group. And by the way, small and unimportant don't mean the same thing. I love the story of the three Texans who were discussing their real estate holdings. And the first Texan says, I hate to boast. He says, but my spread is 1,000 acres and I call it the bar AAA. There's another one upstage you, but my spread is 3,000 acres and I call it the bar quintuple Z. And the third guy was very quiet. He says, how big is your spread? He says, 25 acres. He says, God, that don't sound like much. What do you call yours? He says, downtown Dallas. So, you know, my guess is that the people who are here today probably need this get-together less than the people who aren't here. And that's okay. They call it preaching to the choir, but the choir is starting to burn out. So maybe it's not so bad to preach to the choir. The companion story to the one I just told you, though, is the other side of the picture. And that's the young preacher who has his first parish. And he's coming to deliver his Sunday sermon, and there's a blinding snowstorm. And it's 4 miles that he has to trudge from the parsonage to the church. When he finally gets there, only one parishioner has shown up. And the young clergyman said, gee, with only one person showing up, I guess I'll have to cancel the sermon. And the parishioner said, do you mind if I tell you something, preacher? Just go ahead. He says, you know, I'm a farmer. And every morning, I come down with my truck to feed the cows. And if only one cow shows up, I still feed it. He says, you know, you've taught me some humility. He says, sit down. And he went through the whole service. When it was over, the person got up and says, preacher, you know that story I told you? How if only one cow shows up, I still feed it? He said, I didn't mean to imply I gave him the whole damn truckload. so someplace in there. And so I don't know how you feel. Do you feel comfortable just introducing yourself and letting me know who you are and what role you have in the college? I'm assuming this was open to anybody in the college community, which, by the way, is very, very important to me. Is that I look at the community college as a college community, that we're all a team. In fact, I think I was just joking outside with Jerry on that about the fact that we were coming on Goodwill Hunting, which was where Robin Williams plays the role of a Bunker Hill Community College professor. And I was pointing out that any one of us in this room, no matter what we do at the college, belongs to at least one group where we may be the only person from the college that group knows. And they will then mirror the entire college in the image of that one person. I mean, to give you hypothetical situations which may or may not have happened in my life, but my imagination isn't that good, so if I call it hypothetical, it probably happened. It's like somebody will tell me where the college is, and I get lost trying to get there because how I wrote down the directions wasn't how they said them, and I'll call up the college to find out where they are. And don't you think it makes a big difference to me if the switchboard operator answers by saying, such and such community college, how can I help you, sir? Versus saying, college. Or I get to the campus, and there's supposed to be a fork in the road that somebody told me about, and I don't see it. So I stop at that sign that says directory, and I'm always amazed at that, because it says, you are here. And I didn't know how they knew I was going to be there. You know, it's funny. But again, now imagine this situation. You see the campus patrol drives by, and there's two possible responses. The first one is, hey buddy, can't you read the sign? It says no parking or standing. The second response is, you look confused, sir. Can I help you get to where you're going? And not only does he tell me, but he says, I happen to be going there myself, just follow me. Now see, that's my first impression. The nicest thing that was ever done for me, you know, and Louise will verify this. If somebody who knew about my career was to list what they thought were the 10 most important speaking engagements in my life, and I would list my own version, there might not be two on the list that was similar. In other words, how I interpret it might be completely different how the other side of it. The most significant speaking engagement I ever gave in my whole life, as far as I'm concerned, was to the New York School Bus Drivers Association. And the reason was that the person who invited me, who was in charge of transportation for the Corning New York School District, was the president of that organization. They wanted me to speak. And I like this guy a lot. It's Bob Duncan. He's a really nice guy. He was a former athletic director for the high schools in the area. Now he's in charge of transportation. And when he told me the date, I already have something booked for that. That's just the only time I refuse an engagement is if I already have something else scheduled. But I felt heartbroken because this is the one date that's kind of over. And I told him, I said, Bob, I feel terrible, but I have something else scheduled. He says, could you hold another date open? I'll call you back within the hour. And what he had done within the hour is he changed the date of his annual meeting to agree with the day I was free to speak. That's how much he thought of me as a speaker. Well, that was great, but now what's the problem? What do you say to justify, you know, what am I going to tell them that somebody can say, wow, am I glad they picked him to be a speaker? And so I asked my friends who are liberal arts people, I'll just paraphrase their answer briefly. They said, how about talking about the role of the school bus driver in the development of Western civilization? And the other group, who we'll call the hard hats, said, talk to them about how important it is to be a safe school bus driver. Well, heck, that was their job. They should come to the Rotary Club and tell the Rotarians the importance of driving carefully. So I was caught in the bind until it finally dawned on me. And what the topic was, that of all the people who rode the bus to school, the school bus driver was the first representative of the school district they saw every morning, and the last one they saw at night. And that what that school bus driver did on that bus could affect positively or negatively the kids who rode that bus more than any event that was going to happen in school that day. And that's how I see all of us. All of us. It doesn't matter whether we're faculty or administrators or classified, whatever the word is, clerical. We're all part of a team. And either the whole team wins or the whole team loses. See, you remember Star Trek? Remember when that came out? It was the 60s, wasn't it? And what was going on in the 60s? Wasn't there a terrible amount of Cold War stuff between Russia, China, and the United States? Who are the three main characters? You have a Russian, Chinese guy, and an American guy. And you knew who the American was because he was the skipper, right? I mean, that always had to be that way. Now, what happened? If you remember what's happening now, it's the 25th century or something. And these Klingons are such bad people that all these people that used to have problems on Earth now have to unite to fight the greater enemy. See, it wasn't that they loved each other, it was that they were threatened from without. We see now what's happened is whether we call ourselves administrators, faculty, or staff, we're the Star Trek crew. And who are the Klingons? The legislature, parents who say standards aren't what they used to be. Let's cut the budgets. Let's not pay for kids to take remedial courses at the community college because they should have learned this stuff in high school. I don't know if it's happening in Virginia yet. They're threatening in Massachusetts to stop paying. for developmental courses because the kids should have known it before. Well, I don't care what should have been. It's what is. And if we stop paying for those courses, these kids aren't going to pay for it themselves. Where are they going to wind up? The military isn't going to take them because now they have smart bombs. We don't need as many infantry. See, this idea of joining the military so you can have 3 square meals a day and a roof over your head, that's been replaced by prisons now. Going to cut the prison budget? They don't cut the prison budget, that expands. You want to increase the prison population? You want to increase the homeless? Good, cut the community college budget. That's where the at-risk people are going. At least the ones who are fortunate enough to have got this far. See, my son is the assistant director of the Boston Trauma Outreach Center. And the stories that he tells me, he's only been there for a few weeks so far. Got that because of work he did in Turkey for helping the social workers there learn play therapy to help the 75,000 homeless kids from the earthquakes. 33,000 school-age kids commit suicide in this country every year. 33,000. We're not talking about the kids who buy guns, not the kids who come and call them bomb threats. These are kids who already have seen life as being hopeless, as young as 7 years old. And what he tells me is these 7-year-olds are jumpers. They don't know how to use guns yet. They're not clever enough to know how to hang themselves. They're jumpers. They look for a high window when they jump. Imagine being a teacher now in the 3rd grade trying to teach long division, being harassed by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics to improve your teaching strategy, and you have to look at all those windows to see if any of your at-risk kids are getting too close to them, and you tell me you're going to be concentrating that much? These kids aren't making it to college. I worry about the kids who don't get to us. And there's more and more of them that's happening. Our job is going to be even more important, see, in the 21st century than it was in the 20th century. And these kids are going to see us as one of my favorite religious parables. Maybe you've heard the story about the man who's on top of a mountain, 20,000 feet above the ground, and he slips and falls. He's about to fall to his death when he grabs hold of a very fragile shrub. And clinging to it, in desperation, he looks up to the heavens and he says, "Is there anybody up here?" And this voice booms down and says, "I'm up here." And he says, "Who are you?" And the voice says, "I'm God." He says, "Can you help me?" And now the voice becomes very exasperated. He says, "Of course I can help you, that's why they call me God. But because you even asked me that question, you must now show me a token of your faith. Let go of that shrub." He says, "Is there anybody else up there?" We're that fragile shrub to which hundreds of thousands of kids have come through. So I was telling Jerry and some other people, since 1958, which is my first year associated with community colleges, there have been 10 million community college graduates in this country. Now what's interesting about this is I was saying this 10 to 12 years ago. So God knows what that number is now. Let's assume modestly that over 50 million people attended the community college. How many of those kids were coming in place of going to Harvard, in place of going to MIT? These were kids who had no place else to go to. Where would this country have been today if it weren't for the community colleges? Where would these kids have shown up? In prison? Homeless? We were chartered to take students who had no hope for upward mobility and give them that hope, to give them an avenue. We weren't here to take kids who had 15 avenues and offer them a 16th one. Does that mean we can't do that? Of course we can. But our mission is to those kids who had no hope without us. See? That's the only recruiting I would do as a community college president. I would go to every high school and say, "Look guys, if you can't find what you're looking for out there, we're here. And if you want to pay $35,000 a year to get what you get for a couple of thousand here, if it'll make the parents happier to say you're taking a developmental course at a famous university, so much more power to you. I'll no more recruit them than I'll recruit a person to go on welfare." So what is the job of the welfare department? To get more people on welfare or more people off? Our job is to put people back into the mainstream, to give people hope who didn't have hope. I don't know how it is down here, but at Bunker Hill, over 1/3 of my students in developmental math never even applied to a 4-year college. That's how insecure they felt. I was having a debate the other day, probably a few my counterpart at the University of Massachusetts in Boston. And he said, you know, why are you having so much problem? We're doing a much better job with our developmental students. I said, because my developmental students are much more fully prepared than yours. He says, how in the world can you say that? You haven't even seen my students. I said, I don't have to. By default, they're better. He says, what do you mean? I said, by definition, every one of your students applied to a 4-year college. You wouldn't be at the University of Massachusetts if it didn't apply to a 4-year college, because they're a 4-year college. My kids aren't even applying there. They do afterwards, and they get accepted, and they graduate with honors. But it doesn't always take 2 years. We'll talk about that in a little while, too. There's nothing changing demographic. But that's who we are. You know, it's funny, the country doesn't recognize this. I can make the community colleges independently wealthy if they just take my advice. We make a deal with the mafia. They give us all the money that we want. And in exchange for that, we teach them how to keep a low profile. If they could launder their money the way we launder our good deeds, there wouldn't even be an indictment, let alone a conviction. And in fact, if you want to use the mafia as an example, let me tell you how I visualize the community college. Imagine, if you will, a town in which an old mafia group is supplying protection to a street. In other words, this particular street is being protected by the mafia. And after many, many generations, a new group comes in and says, we want a piece of the action. Now, the old mafia is getting very, very rich on this piece of the action, so they figure, rather than have a war, we'll share with these people. But since we've been here for a long time, we know which is the better side of the street. We'll take the better side, and we'll give them the worst side. Okay? And we'll make a pact that neither side infringes on the other side's turf. And so the new group comes into town, and everything is fine. Except that a year or two later, somebody from a different street sees what's going on in that street, and they say, we want protection too. And the old mafia says, they're not on our side of the street. We don't have to do anything about this. The new mafia says, look, they're not on the old mafia side of the street, so we're not peddling on their turf if we help them. And pretty soon, to make a long story short, the new mafia group controls the entire town, except for that one side of the street that the old mafia said was sacred. And in this analogy, the old mafia is a traditional university, who was the only game in town for higher education until the community colleges came around. The community colleges says, we want a piece of the action too. We have people who need help. They say, great, you take the ones who can't get in here. You take the ones that we don't want. And what started to happen after that? A whole bunch of other people, once we were there, said, hey, I want to go there too. This was the kid who dropped out of school, maybe in the 4th grade. And saw that there was no upward mobility, decided, I want a chance. The university didn't want that student. The single parent who didn't live near a daycare center, maybe I could go to the community college. The university didn't want that student. The urban poor, the rural poor, I call them outmates as opposed to inmates. The inmates are prisoners who are incarcerated. Outmates are prisoners who aren't incarcerated. The urban poor, the rural poor, the kid at McDonald's who will never go any higher than the cash register because he has only a 4th grade education, the single parent. Who helped those people? Who took them in? Who was the Statue of Liberty for them? We were. And when the university talks about the successful exploits with non-traditional students, what non-traditional students are they talking about? The ones who were our success stories. That's where they started. I was speaking, I forget where it was that I was speaking, it was St. Louis. And a woman who came to that meeting was president of the 4-year college in the area. And she told me all these wonderful success stories that she was having with non-traditional students. I said, do me a favor and let me know. Go back to your campus and look up at the records of these students that you're calling your successes, and let me know how many of them started at your college versus how many transferred from the community colleges. This was about 2 months ago. I'm hoping she's still looking things up, but she hasn't come back to me yet. But that's what's happening. You see, we are different but equal to the university. Our missions are different. You know, my academic background is as far removed as you can get from being a populist. I'm in the second graduating class at Brandeis University, Phi Beta Kappa, distinction in mathematics, magna cum laude, graduate studies at MIT, and I was finally lucky enough to work my way up to urban community colleges and prison education. Why? I'm not going to make fun of elite education. The elite population will determine the quality of life that a society will enjoy. I love Bunker Hill Community College, and I'm convinced if we ever find a cure for cancer, it's going to come from the University of Virginia. It's going to come maybe from Duke, maybe from Harvard. I'm willing to bet it's not going to happen in the Bunker Hill Community College chemistry lab. On the other hand, whether that society will survive long enough to enjoy those benefits will depend on how well that society treats the lower half of its population. And that's who we are. See, we're the ones that allow the elite population to have an audience on which to perform. That's our mission. Now, when I go to lots of colleges, community colleges, people get aggravated with me when I say this. Because they say, we have bright students here too. Why do you say the lower half? We have students in the upper half. Well, everybody has students in the upper half. You know that MIT has 50% of every class is below class average. That even the place as bright as MIT, there's always a guy who graduates very last in his class. It even happens at Duke Medical School. Guy who always graduates at the bottom of his class. They call him doctor as he graduates. But there's always a lower half, isn't there? And you can't cleanse it. If you did away with the lower half, all that would happen is the lower half of the upper half would become the lower half. Always going to be the lower half. You can't change that fact. See? And not only that, if the universities had to cope with that, do you realize what a disaster that would be? First of all, most of those guys couldn't do that. Because they're not trained. Yeah, when I was at MIT, I always believed that people were born knowing fractions and long division. And I get the opposite extreme. One of my students at the North Carolina prison said to me, Rib, I love you as a teacher, but let's just be honest about it. God made fractions hard, and there's nothing you can do about it. People have trouble with that. Secondly, suppose they were adept at teaching this type of student. What's then going to happen to the elite students? Are they going to have time to teach everybody? We do a fantastic job to allow the universities to stay pure. Because we do the screening for them. We screen out the questionable ones. Our success stories go on. And we go on and on talking this works. But you see, part of it is, my grandmother, rest her soul, had a hard time with English. So whenever she found a word in English, she made sure she could use it in as many different ways as possible. Like a haddock. There was a fish, right? Haddock. What was the thing you took 2 aspirins for? It was when you brought the old furniture. That's the haddock. Yeah, she was fantastic. She never wanted to go to a doctor who practiced medicine. When he's through practicing, we'll go to one. Practice medicine. Well, see, in the community colleges, we do just the opposite. We have 3 completely different things that we talk about. And we treat them as if they mean the same thing. You know what the 3 things are? Community college, junior college, and 2-year college. The students use those interchangeably sometimes. I go to the 2-year college, I go to the junior college. 3 completely different things. First of all, the junior college is much older than the community college. Started over 100 years ago. But it wasn't a comprehensive community college. Where did the original junior college start? You know?
Massachusetts.
They were like, we only did that after we found out other states were making money on it. California, the Midwest. The Midwest, Illinois. I gave a convention address at the community college and started in 1900. And it was a branch of DMAT, the Des Moines, Iowa Community College, a little town called Boone. And so what happened was, these were agricultural communities. And some of these bright kids on the farm couldn't come to college because they had farm duties. So what did the college do? They said, well, the first 2 years of college are the same for just about everybody. We'll start 2-year branches. So what happened is now the kid would only have to go away from home for 2 years instead of 4. That was the genuine meaning of the word junior college. By the way, when I was at MIT and I got recruited to come to Cornell Community College, what do you think the chances are I would have gone there if the founding president said, I'm the president of Cornell Junior College? I'm going to go to a junior college after I've been at MIT? No, I'm already at a senior college. What do I need a junior college for? But what about the first community college? See, it doesn't say whether it's 2 years or 4 years. Do you hear that in the title? Do you hear whether it's public or private in the title? Do you hear whether it's voc tech or liberal arts in the title? It's what? A college that exists for the community. See, the 2-year college part, the junior college part, is just part of our overall mission. Truman is the president who made us who we are today. Who were the first non-traditional students? Only the word wasn't coined at that time. The World War II veterans. These were the guys who came back after 4 years of fighting in the foxholes to save the world for democracy, and they're told by their professor they can't chew gum in class. Now, you don't talk to a guy who's been in the foxhole for 4 years and you say you don't chew gum in class. And they laughed at the professors. And what did the professor say? These guys are unteachable. See, what was the professors used to? 18-year-old freshmen who didn't know enough to talk back. By the way, your FTE formula is still funded that way. If I have a 38-year-old single parent bringing up 3 teenagers, what do I tell her about financial aid if she doesn't take four courses? You can't get full financial aid. You're not a full-time FTE. See, when do you think the FTE formula was made up? About the time those veterans came back. It was based on the fact that what? A college freshman is 18 years old, takes 5 courses, doesn't work. Do you have 10 of those on your campus? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we don't have many of those. Our average age, I think this is national, average age of our freshman class was 29. North Carolina is 34 because that's, I think, the only state in which the community colleges oversee adult education. So they count in all these people who are on high school graduate yet. So their average age is up to 34. So I'm driving at. Now, the comprehensive community college is the one where Truman said, well, there has to be a place for these people to go. We'll make up a place. We will start something. We already have the nucleus in the junior colleges, where people can come and try their academic skills, see what they can become. And when I went to Corning in 1958, 80% of our entering students were still junior college kids. They were still in one university. We talked about someday having it 50-50. What is it now in most places? I think it's reversed in a lot of places. We're more a comprehensive community college than a junior college. And in fact, it's gotten so big that instead of us emulating the universities are now emulating us. Think about that. Think of how many universities now have 2-year college degrees. We used to worry about how do we please the universities. They're an actor now. The mafia is invading us because they found out they gave up too much. See, they don't admit it, but what if the colleges and universities degenerated into white collar trade schools? How many colleges are saying we're not going to require this because you don't need that in industry? University of Rochester almost gave up their math department because everything is statistics and computers. Can you imagine a university give up the math department? Kids would love it. But I mean, think about that. I'm just randomly just making a few things here. Now, how about a 2-year college for the kids that we take in? Think of some of the kids that we take. Harvard takes in a student that has, in fact, there was just an article in the Boston Globe recently that Harvard turned down over 1,000 applicants this year who were valedictorians of the high school class. They turned down over 100 kids who had perfect scores on the SATs. That's how stiff the competition is there. Harvard and MIT admissions people told me they no longer ask kids what their extracurricular activities were. They ask for hardcore students. They don't say to you, were you on the school newspaper? They say, were you the editor? They don't say, did you play football? Were you the captain? Were you an all-state? That's how strict the competition is. Who do I take in? Kids who have a pulse speed. We're open enrollment. If we had SATs, some of our kids' SATs wouldn't be 700. But we take them in. Now let me ask you, is this reverse snobbery? If we say in 2 calendar years, our kids are going to be in the same place as theirs. It's insane. What we mean to say is what? If our kids want to go on to the university, when they graduate from our institution, they will have the first 2 years of a college education. Doesn't mean it's going to take 2 calendar years. It may take 5 for some of our kids. But the kids are trained to believe, my God, I must be stupid. It's taken me 5 semesters and I haven't graduated yet. You say, but what about our private kids, our honor students? Well, let me ask you this question. All other things being equal, whatever that means, what's the likelihood that you would accept 2 2-year packages over 1 4-year package? If I know I want a baccalaureate degree, why don't I start at the university from which I want to obtain that degree? Why come to a community college first, graduate, and then become a social freshman all over again when I transfer? Now, it might be financial. It might be academic. It might be social. But there's a special reason why kids come to us. Every kid who comes to us is a unique minority of one. You say, yeah, but these kids are bright. You know something? If I have a kid who just was bright in high school but wasn't lucky enough to get to a top-notch university and comes to me instead, relative to the group that he really should be competing with, he's in the lower half. He may be in the upper half of our student body, but that kid who he was competing with in high school, who goes on to Princeton or to William and Mary, wherever it happens to be, don't you realize that in 2 years, that kid's going to be even further ahead of my kid? If only because that kid is being pushed by other strong competition? Even to have an honors program sometimes isn't strong enough to offset the competition that you get. How many sprinters have set a track record in practice versus an actual competition? How often do you run better when there's somebody ahead of you and you have to catch them than when you're ahead of the pack and you say, I can let up a little bit and win? I have a friend who's a track person. I won't do my own track record. I run the 100 yards in about 2 days. I used to jog 5 miles a day. At the end of a month, I was 150 miles from home. So I gave that up. But you know, he told me when a track star wants to set a running record, let's say he wants to break the record for the mile, he gets 4 quarter-of-a-mile runners as pacers to each run. They run like a mile relay. What they do is these 4 guys each run 1 lap while he has to run 4, and he's always chasing them. They're always ahead of him. And he won't break the record unless he's chasing somebody who's running fast. It's just human nature. So even our best kids need us in ways that the universities don't understand. That's who we are uniquely. And I think I've spoken enough for that part. I've deviated from the thing I wanted to do. I want to make sure you know where I'm coming from first. What I intend to do is maybe after we get to know each other, we talk about who we are, I'll give you some specific things that I feel very strongly about. And I will never tell you how to do them. All I believe is that if I can show you, from my point of view, what I think is important, and you happen to believe me, you will find the ways to implement it. You will find the ways to implement it. And if you don't believe me, you shouldn't implement it anyway. See, I think we spend too much time on showing people how, rather than to show them why. I find that most of my math students, if I can convince them as to the why part, the how part becomes much easier. You see, if I don't know what an answer is supposed to mean, how do I recognize a stupid answer? In other words, if I invert the wrong fraction when I divide, and I have no idea what the quotient means anyway, how do I know there's something wrong? See what I'm saying? The why is very, very important. So that's what I like to stress. Okay, and then I'll show you what makes us, how we compete with the university in ways that they don't know how to fight against us, where we're superior to the university, not because we're better people, but because we are challenged by a population in general that they're not used to. And they're going to have to get used to it soon, because this problem is going to get worse and worse. And in the same way that we should be looking to them for guidance and where the state of the art is, they will be coming to us if we do our job right to find out how do you teach the unteachables. Because our best students, you see, are the ones that weren't the best students and who got them for the most part. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then what I'm going to do is then give you a chance to cross-examine me. In fact, I'm hoping in the next few minutes as I get to know who you should have you each identify yourself to me, what your role is at the college, and what one problem, or what anything you want, what one thing you would like to see answered before today is over. And then that will become the basis for part two, where we address the questions that you bring up, not the questions that I bring up. In other words, in terms of a court of law, what I'm doing right now would be called direct testimony. I'm talking about what I feel like talking about. That's my lawyer's questions. Hell, if I can't answer my lawyer's questions, what's going to happen when they cross-examine me? If I already got myself convicted with my own lawyer. So in other words, the real test is what? How do you answer the cross-examination? So we'll take a little break after that, and we can stay as long as you want, or as little as you want, it doesn't matter. And hopefully we'll bring up some things that will maybe give you some things to think about, and maybe have in-house workshops afterwards. Who knows the students at this college better than you guys do? That's what we're interested in. One of the reasons I drifted away from Mathematics, which is a group that I was not only the first president of, but the motivation behind it, you see, was that I believed in the uniqueness of every community college. See, politically, I'm very, very liberal. I believe in a strong federal government because I don't trust the individual states, especially in some parts of the country, to do what I think is right. For the community colleges, I'm an ultra-conservative. I believe that each community college knows best what's right for the people it services, because that's where the people are. What's the rough figure I read? 80% of the community college graduates remain in the area. These are the people who become your next generation of citizens here. You're the ones, the only ones who can teach these kids, and you're the only ones they trust. See, I may know what's better for average town USA than you do, but I don't know what's better for your students than you do. See, so that's part of what we have to do. It's going to be up to you, and I think that you can do these things, provided that you see certain avenues that maybe you didn't notice before. Mistakes that we made in the past that I've learned from. And we'll talk about those if you do it. If you don't mind, if you could just stop over here and just tell me who you are, what your affiliation with the college is, and if you feel like something you'd like to see successfully addressed by the time today is over. Anything you want to say?
I'll go ahead and start. Ron Davis, Dean of Instruction and Student Development. And I'm interested in encouraging a community of dialogue about teaching and learning.
I'm Joe Henschel. I'm the interim dean for workforce development. I have been here for just under 2 years in kind of an organizational change agent role, about to turn the reins over to a new dean of workforce development. And I'm interested in ideas about how to stretch the resources when you're in a lean organization which is under-resourced to take on and embrace new challenges and new goals and missions.
That's a tough one, isn't it? That's what we did, that mafia money.
That's right.
I'm Linda Clark. I'm the grant specialist. I've been here for about 3 weeks, and that's why I'm here also to learn about the community college system and how to gain funds and resources from community college.
I'm Barbara Gibson, the reference librarian, and I'm looking for ways to get more students to use our facilities and innovative ways to reach out to our more diverse students.
That's an interesting thing to bring up, because I have students who are so diverse in terms of the pressures that are on them, that even if I make my videotapes available to them in the Learning Center, they don't have time to watch them. In other words, I have to have a program called Take a Teacher Home. It sounds very simple. But basically, if I don't have those videotapes for them to take home, they're not going to watch them. Because that's the only time they have the chance is when the kids are sleeping or something like that. I think it's a very big problem.
I'm Artemis Gallagher. I teach history, and I guess my big and keep trying new things when there isn't always funding for some of the things you want to do. You kind of lose your initiative every now and again.
Not only that, but your job is much,
Motivation.
yeah, you know something, your job is much harder than mine. People look at math as being harder than history in a way. The difference is in math, you cannot run out of John and Bill Marple problems. In English, you can't run out of who and whom problems. But in history, how do you ask a person to practice writing an essay on the French Revolution by giving them an equivalent one to write on something else? In other words, it's very, very difficult to do mastery learning, I think, in something like history and the like. And I think the other problem that you face, that I sense is happening, is that more and more people are saying things other than the history majors. Why do I have to know history? I mean,
Right.
we'll talk about that too. So it's a really legitimate thing. So hopefully I'll be able to say something. I keep doing these things hoping I'll say something I've never heard before and solve a problem.
Hi, I'm Fran Fleck, and I'm coordinator of academic assessment. And I don't know if I had a specific idea of what I.
It may come up as we're talking later. What we'll do is at about 2:15, maybe 2:30, we'll take a short break, and then you can even talk collective. We'll have cooperative learning. You can get together and say, what question can we ask that will teach this guy not to make any more trips? Yeah. And
Hi, I'm Linda Eames. I'm chair of Communications, Humanities, and Nursing Division. I'm particularly interested in learning communities, groups of developmental students who need all three developmental areas, reading, writing, and math, and how we foster them, and how we provide funding so faculty can have released time to support them.
well, that's a mouthful. The business we should have to coordinate. I don't know if you ever heard the story about the dean who died, and he was sure he was going to go to hell. When he woke up, he found himself dean of the most magnificent institution he's ever seen in his whole life. He turned to the person next to him and said, you know, I thought I was going to go to hell, and here I am in heaven. He says, what do you mean heaven? This is hell, and I happen to be the devil. He says, my golly, if this is hell, how come I'm dean of such a magnificent institution? He says, 2 English departments. Now, I don't know if you see it, but this is what's happening. So I just thought you'd take that story on. Because, we have this problem at our own college. One group was talking about we have to teach more basic reading and writing skills, and the other group wants Shakespeare for everybody. And the thing is, we have to do both.
You've been here before.
It's called Welcome to America. And by the way, that's a big problem that we have in this country. They talk about how the Japanese do better than us, everybody does better than us. There's going to be one group that's worse than us, but when you hear people talk about it, it's Bloomsville. And the thing I always ask people, if Japanese education is so great, A, why don't they invent anything? And B, why do all their best graduate students come here? I mean, we do an awful lot of stuff right there. The reason that we look so bad is we don't decide in the 3rd grade who's coming to college and who isn't. We allow everybody to try. I mean, I could have a great baseball team if they only let my top hitter bat all the time. Letting all those other guys play that are ruining my team. And then I think it's something that we have to consider. And I don't know how we answer that, but I just wanted to throw that in because as soon as you told me what you're coordinating here, I said, boy, teaching math is easy. I mean, makes some pre-constructive surgery.
Nurses make it worthwhile.
Oh, I'm Beverly Phillips.
I know you, Beverly.
Yes,
From the old days.
I arranged for you to talk to the MAA years ago when I was vice chair of the programs, and I didn't want to miss an opportunity to hear you.
Thank you. Use the other way around. Sally didn't know whether she should listen to me or have the surgery, which is college way out. But when you mentioned that I teach math on death row, it gives a whole new definition of math anxiety in North Carolina. When a guy is convicted of murder 1, they give him a choice between lethal injection and basic math. If it's lethal injection, that's math anxiety. And I guess we can start over here to it.
I'm John Philbrick. I'm Director of Information Technology, and technology is inevitably about change.
Yes.
So just how do I help people work through it?
And I think the technology anxiety is starting to outweigh speech anxiety and math anxiety in a lot of places. It's kind of interesting too. Teaching an old dog new tricks.
I'm Sandy DeShiel, and I teach in the math department. And my concern is not so much about teaching mathematics, but about teaching or instilling in my students a work ethic, particularly those who
see, that's something that never happened in universities before. I mean, remember the traditional image of a university? When you went there, this was your Camelot. You just went there to expand your mind. You weren't worried about bringing up a family at that time. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but certain days in class, I think it's a miracle if common denominators are in my students' top 50 priorities. I sometimes have 100% absenteeism, even when 90% of them are there, because their minds aren't with me. They're worried about where the rent is going to come from the next month, worried about a whole bunch of other things. So that is a real problem.
George Dewey's mathematics see me before the previous conference.
My name's Schweitzer, coordinator of learning resources, and my areas include the library, the tutoring center, the math writing centers that support many of the students who need assistance outside of class. So I'm hoping that I can learn some new techniques or ways of reaching the students.
In fact, at the risk of alienating everybody else to make your position seem even more important, I think that the area that you're in may become the future of what education is going to look like. That it's not that we're going to give up classroom teaching. It's that we now, for the first time, have the technology to allow a teacher to lecture to 15 different students on 15 different topics at the same time. It's called videotape. Because I sometimes say, as I'm talking to you here, I have students in North Carolina in prisons listening to me lecture right now. It's a very neat system. I made up a name called second generation interactive video because the NSF thinks that videotape is a dinosaur now, so I can't say we have videotape. We have second generation interactive. And what that means is the inmate sees me on videotape, but asks his classroom teacher. In other words, the classroom teacher is a generation removed from the person who gave the lecture. And that sounds so great. And I don't want anybody to tell the NSF this. It's just plain old videotape. We'll talk about that too.
I'm Lisa Draper in the nursing department. I thought I might pick up some tips on teaching and learning.
Nice program, nursing program too.
We have a good program.
Well, the concept. See, I look at ourselves as care providers for some of our students. In fact, when you talk about rehabilitating people, people make fun of me for spoon feeding my students. And I often wonder how people drank soup with a fork. I mean, to me, spoon feeding is nurturing. And think of how many patients in the hospital now need TLC as much as they need the actual medical knowledge. And look at how the profession is going in terms of many nurses now becoming what they call nurse practitioners, junior doctors, and the like. And what we're doing is what we're giving up on the TLC part of the places, simply because of the pressure of a whole bunch of other things. But I digress again.
I'm Susan Conrad, I teach development and reading.
My daughter has been the goalie on the varsity soccer team, and we've been teaching each other not to have expectations, just to be. I guess I'm always looking for a little nugget I can take back to give my hope to my own students.
That's great. Talk about that later. I think reading, if there's anything that's more important than development of math, it's development of reading. I would not allow development, if I had my way, students would not be eligible to take development of math till they could read it at least 6th grade level, because they can't do word problems. How many times have you heard a student say I can do everything except the word problems? And in the textbook of life, that's all there are word problems. See, when a kid says I can do everything except the word problems, he says I can do everything except what's important. So the ability to read is much more important, especially with the technologies available today. See, by pushing a button, you can get the answer to any question that you ask. What if it's the wrong question? See, in many cases, we haven't built a sophisticated enough artificial intelligence to say, hey, Mac, are you sure that's the question you wanted to ask me? And I heard a nugget last night that I think ties in with what you're doing. I spoke at the Penn CTM meeting at Christopher Newport. It's the Peninsula affiliate of the Virginia Council of Teachers of Mathematics. And one of the teachers there was referring to the kindergarten teacher and say, in K through 3, you learn to read. From then on, you read to learn. You can't get away from reading as the main form of knowledge transfer. page, for kids who can't afford to buy a book. If you can't afford to buy the New York Times, you just dial it up on the internet and read it for nothing. If you can't read it, don't matter. Sorry.
I'm Sue Silverhorn, and I'm Health and Physical Education. Sort of along with Sandy, and it just seems that more and more of the students are in the class to get the credit. And to be able to motivate them to want to get more than just the credit out of the class seems harder.
And by the way, that's the research we as community college people should be doing. Again, to make a digression, see, I was a senior lecturer at the MIT Center for Advanced Engineering Study. I made 83 videotapes in calculus and 17 volumes of study guide that MIT used all over the world. Okay? For the Department of Corrections in North Carolina and the Department of Community Colleges. You see, I made 102 videotapes on basic math. This idea of kids being in the classroom. And there was a point I was going to make. This is awful. The nice thing about Alzheimer's is you make new friends every day. You can hide your own Easter eggs. I mean, my God. But I was going to make a point that I'll come back. It'll come back to me eventually, but it doesn't matter. I felt that what bothers me is usually when something slips my mind, I realize it wasn't important to say, but something inside of me is saying it was something that I really wanted to say, but it'll come back. And you look like my wife, so I don't dare ask her what she's hoping to get out of today. She just came to make sure that there really was a conference, and I wasn't wrong about something. No, Louise has been with me for 47 years, and quite frankly, has been a very, very, she's my motivating force. In other words, there are many, many people, let's say women, who say to me, thank God we have people like you. But under their breath they're saying, but thank God my own husband is much more practical. I mean, Louise has never once told me that I shouldn't follow where my heart is going because there was no money in it. Do this because you'll get more money. It's been this kind of a relationship where I've had the kind of support that has made whatever career I've had quite successful, and I'm very, very thankful. Although I did stop talking to her for a while when she called me model husband, and I found out that model meant a small imitation of the real thing. And we know each other from the old days.
Yeah, Dick Paradiso. I'm in the business science division, and I teach most of the business math classes and have struggled with the base rate percentage for many years. When I bumped into you at Charlottesville, you inspired me and made me a better teacher. That's why I'm here today, to get further inspiration.
Well, let me pay you a compliment. There's a saying in the hotel business. It sounds silly when you first hear it, but it's very profound. It says any room that doesn't get rented today never gets rented, because tomorrow it's tomorrow's room. We see in life, any hour that you spend, you can never have back again. People give you money for having been there, but they can't give you back the time, except on Twilight Zone or Star Trek. You cannot have that time back again. So all you can ask for is that for any hour that you spent, that you got as much out of it as was possible. And see, so when you say something like that to me, it makes me feel that whatever time I spent in Charlotte couldn't have been better spent. And so that does as much for me as anything that I've said about you've done for you. Now, I don't want you to think you're just the person who runs the thing. You are part of the college community, so if you don't mind, and you'd like to tell me who you are.
Sure. I'm Marlene Waters, and I work in the audiovisual department, and I serve all these people that are in this room with audio and video and photography.
Is there any nasty thing you'd love to say to them that you're afraid to that I can say for you? Or?
No, better not.
Okay. Or any questions like that?
That's fine.
I'm Rex Evans. I'm a magician, and I work with the creative staff to extend learning beyond the classroom in the areas we call cooperative education and career services.
That sounds exciting. I'd like to come to one of your lectures. I look at people. I have people who think that anybody who can do mathematics is a magician. So,
okay, I guess I'm left.
yeah.
I'm Arlene O'Rourke, and I'm the Human Resources Manager, and actually I'm here with two hats on. As the Human Resources Manager and as a part-time faculty member, I'm here helping to, as many colleges and business and everything is going through
What was your educational background?
Well, it's a few of my friends here that know my educational background, and I was a single parent that started at community college, 3 children, and it took me a total of 18 years to get to from beginning to the end of my master's.
So you weren't 18 years old.
I wasn't 18 years old.
You didn't take 5 courses a semester.
But I
didn't do much stuff.
yeah, I feel like I can relate to a lot of those students, and I'm hoping to maybe learn something of how what Dick was saying and Sue of how to get them there from more than just being there. And so I'm a novice, and I'm just trying to.
We're all novices. You know, if I ever write my autobiography, by definition, if I don't, nobody will.
Yeah.
It's going to be entitled, I was born very late in life.
Well, Dick here was one of my professors, Dick Paradiso, and he, a number of classes, and he inspired me then. That was many years ago, and he still inspires me, right, Dick? Wow, that is.
We know it's funny, I was talking to the group last night, people don't know how to visualize numbers. In other words, mathematicians are the only people who see numbers as nouns. Everybody else sees them as adjectives. In other words, 4 means this many, right? How would you describe 4 without doing something like this? Only mathematicians can do that. You see, lay people can't. So they only understand numbers if they're used as adjectives to modify nouns. So to show people how big a million is, you simply ask them, when was the millionth day since the birth of Jesus? Now look, if this is the year 2000. If there were 400 days in a year, 2,000 times 400 is only 800,000. There won't be a million days since the birth of Jesus until the 26th century. That's how big a million is. Now, if you use seconds instead of days as the noun, a million seconds is a little bit less than 12 days. A billion seconds is over 31 years. A million is to a billion. That's 12 days is to 31 years. You think I ever had a prison inmate say to me, Herb, I wasn't paying attention yesterday when the judge sentenced me? It was either 12 days or 31 years. I can't remember which one it was. But they'll say, well, I can't remember whether it was a million or a billion. See, and that's part of it. And you see, what's kind of interesting is, as big as a million is, if you double 2 20 times, the result is already over a million. That sounds amazing, doesn't it? See, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, 1,024. 10 twos multiplied together is already over 1,000. A million is 1,000 thousands. So what that means is if you went out and only helped 2 people, each of those 2 people helped 2 people, etc. By the 20th link in the chain, over 1 million people have been helped with nobody having to help more than 2 people. So when you said, if I could just learn 1 new thing a day, that's a lot. Think of how many days we don't remember learning anything. But that risque story, it's not really risque, but the couple who had 8 sets of twins, and they interviewed the father on television, said, you and your wife always have twins? It's all, no, lots of times we don't get anything. Probably close to nothing. My son has a mouth, he calls me 288 because I'm too gross. Okay, but anyway. Yeah, in fact, my daughter, when she makes reservations for us, always does it with her first name because she can't stand to hear them say, with a gross party of 5, please come to the house. The fun name. Anyway, I thought what I would do is a couple of things, then we'll take a break. Do you feel this is worthwhile so far? I mean, I really want this to be your session. Let me tell you just a few things that I learned from the new math that gave me scars that I tried to learn from. And where the title Guidelines to Innovation came from. That basically, when people sprung the new math on the teaching profession, you see, this is one of the few times where the public and the teachers found out about a problem at the same time. The difference was the public didn't have to know how to solve the problem. The teachers did. And there wasn't enough time to develop how to do these things. You see, and the mistakes that we made in the math community was, and these are the guidelines I made up myself for what I call guidelines to innovation. Before you start any innovation, sit down and really answer the question, what's wrong with what we're doing now? Because if you don't know that, why are you changing it? We don't need, you see, if you don't know what the problem is, why, isn't the cliche, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Which, by the way, scares me a lot. It's like a guy driving a car for 50,000 miles without changing the engine oil. Because you ought to change the oil. It says, why? The car's running fine, it ain't broke, don't fix it. See, the problem is by the time it breaks, it may be too late to fix. So I don't like the true meaning of that statement. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I like what it's meant to bring out. If you don't know what the problem is, don't try to solve it. That's the first guideline. And these work sequentially. The second guideline is, once you find out once you can convince people of what's wrong. See, but see what, politically why you have to do that also? What's the first inertia that a person does when you try to show them the way? Does it say, what's wrong with the way we're doing it now? It's to your advantage to get to the next step by being able to answer that question. Like when students say to me, why do I have to know this? You realize how much credibility I lose if I say, because I said so? You don't need to know it in the real world, but you're going to need to know it to pass this test? Can you picture what that kid is now thinking? How come they call me dumb when I'm smart enough not to want to learn something I don't need, and they call him smart when he's dumb enough to teach me something I don't need? And does the stuff have to be relevant to the student too? If that kid says why, that's a cry for help. Remember, the next best thing to being good at something is to convince yourself that what you were bad at wasn't worth knowing in the first place. And if we don't answer that question, there's no need going on. Second guideline is, once you've successfully answered that question, explain why your method solves that problem. Because we don't need two ways not to get the answer. Oh, you can't get the answer this way, here's another way not to get it. See? Does your method solve the problem, or is it just another ego trip? By the way, notice it's much easier to raise these questions than to answer them. The questions can sound kind of trivial. It's the solutions that have to be innovative. And by the way, it works at all levels. See, I think that one of the reasons that innovation fails, isn't the big phrase today, you're told by your superiors to think outside the box? Have you heard that phrase, think outside the box? The problem is that they're inferring that as you think outside the box, come up with a solution that's inside the box, so we can implement it. And the problem is that to go outside the box to solve a problem may result in having to go outside the box to implement the solution. And so it has to work both ways that way. It's like the father who sees his 10-year-old son watching television and says, son, when Abraham Lincoln was your age, he wasn't wasting time watching television. He was studying. And the kid looked up at his father and says, Dad, when he was your age, he was president. I mean, it's a two-sided coin. Okay? The third step is equivalent to, did you wash the baby away with the bathwater? In other words, anything can be improved. And in the course of improving this, did you ruin something that was good about the old? You know, if the old has been around for a long time, there should be something salvageable there. If you have a house that's been wonderful and all of a sudden you see a crack in the ceiling, do you say, oh my God, first the ceiling, now it's going to be the roof, and pretty soon the house will catch fire? Or do you hire somebody to plaster the roof? You don't throw away the whole house because there's a crack in the roof, crack in the ceiling. Maybe some people do. It's not the wisest thing to do. That's why revolutions don't work. Because all they do is interchange the role of the oppressor and the oppressee. The old regime may have had something good to recommend it. But you see, politically you can't admit that, because otherwise, why were you fighting? See, when you try to bring about political change, you can't ask people to fight a war against an enemy that's 70% bad and 30% good, or 60% bad and 40% good. They have to be what? 100% bad. That's why Korea and Vietnam were such disasters, because we couldn't picture them being 100% bad. It was easy with the Japs and the Trouts back in World War II. See, my generation was the end of the age of innocence in America. Ours was the last generation that believed that every other country in the world had propaganda, but not Roosevelt. See, if you said to my father, do you want your son to grow up to be president? He'd say, what's wrong with Roosevelt? And when I grew up, I mean, you know, every town around Boston had two conversation pieces. A town drunk and a town Republican. We used to be envied because in my town it was the same guy. But that's the way it was. See, it's always dangerous to take things out of context, but look at the evolution. I grew up under a president who said, what? We have nothing to fear but fear itself. My kids grew up under a president who said, I am not a crook. Grandchildren grew up under a president who said, I smoke pot but I didn't inhale. Now, if you look at the evolution of those three statements, does it tell you something about society? I admit that I'm cropping stuff here, but there's a message there too. Okay. And the fourth ingredient is, given all the work that it took to bring about this change, and we solved the problem, given all the other problems that we're faced with, was it worth expending this much time and money and energy? Could we have served the time better? See, these are the kind of questions that we have to think about this way. Now, what I'd like to close the session with, and by the way, I don't like to advertise my own materials, but I do have videotapes that I think can be used as a catalyst for staff development. I have 4 half-hour tapes called The Teacher is Coach that will go into this in much more detail. And it's not a money-making thing or anything. I mean, I even give the tapes away if people needed them or wanted them. That's not the issue. But the thing is, I think something we have to recognize is a sports analogy. You remind me of that when you're talking about your daughter, the soccer goalie. In sports, we recognize that great players don't automatically become great coaches. Anybody who follows sports can think of examples of great players who failed miserably as coaches, and great coaches who failed miserably as players. In fact, when I was in North Carolina, where Dean Smith was like next to God, or was next to God, he used to get mad at him because he'd only make the Final Four, but only twice did he win the championship. Yeah, he always gets us to the Final Four, but he never wins the damn thing. And think about that for an interesting thing. Every March they invite allegedly the 64 best college basketball teams in the country to compete for the national championship. Do you realize that except for the team that wins the whole thing, the other 63 can go saying that the most important game we ever played in, we lost? You do not get out of that tournament until you lose a game. And as soon as you lose a game, you're out of it. So 63 of the 64 best teams in the country failed to win them. And Nike recognizes that with this very humane commercial that blasted the airwaves during the Atlanta Olympics, saying you don't win silver, you lose gold. What a horrible thing to have to admit that some person in the whole world is better than you are. You don't win silver, you lose gold. Is that a message to give kids today? Can you win and still be outscored? Sure you can. Dean Smith, probably the best basketball coach maybe that ever lived at the college level. Maybe. Certainly the top 5, I would say. I think it was wonderful. I didn't know Dean was his first name. I think isn't it a wonderful place like the University of North Carolina has an administrator coaching the basketball. I thought that was great. But you see, he never played professional basketball. He never started a game for his college team. Yet he was the last guy to hold Michael Jordan to less than 20 points in the game. He just took him out whenever Michael shot too much. He was a great coach. But do you think anybody said to him, you can't coach Michael Jordan because you never played pro ball yourself? See, coach should have a t-shirt that says, ain't it amazing what you can do with your brains in somebody else's body? And that's what it takes to be a great coach. By the way, there's a saying that says great players make great coaches. It sounds like it's contradicting what I just said. It doesn't say that. What it says is if you want to be a great coach, just get great players. See, great players will make you a great coach. See, I can't coach a high school basketball team. I couldn't lose every game. I could have coached the United States Olympic basketball team in Barcelona, and we'd have won the gold medal. I would have started any 5 of those guys and give them just 2 instructions. The first one would be when you feel yourself getting tired, take yourself out of the game. Second one would be on your way to the bench, as inconspicuously as possible, tell me who I should replace you with. And that's all it would have taken. We'd have won the gold medal. These guys were too good to lose. See, that's who you're teaching at Harvard and at MIT. People once said to me, what's the most common form of instruction at MIT? Is it group-paced lecturing or self-paced mastery learning? I said neither. There's a method called winging it. You just come into class and say, what was the topic for today? It was like integration by parts. So I don't have to give a lecture. And these kids would learn. And if it was too hard, they discovered this new thing called studying. And they learned it. They learned it. It doesn't work that way. See, academia is if academia were a sport, it would be the only sport where they didn't believe what we just said. Academia says that great players become great coaches because what is the credential to become a university professor? Do they ask you for a treatise on how you would teach long division to a 40-year-old adult learner? Or they ask you, what did you publish? Who did you study with? Do you have a doctorate? All of which are what? Players' credentials. Players' credentials, not coaching credentials. See? And by the way, who gets invited to educational summit meetings? The players or the coaches, for the most part. The players, right? The university professors. And the ones who aren't players are the general managers. They're called governors, secretary of education. What do they know about what's happening in the trenches other than what we tell them? But we're not there at the summit meetings to tell them that. Look at the composition of any summit committee that gets together and see how the urban areas are represented or how they're not represented. We're trying to solve coaching problems by asking the best players and general managers. And they don't know the answers because they don't even know there's a problem. What do you think would have happened in my career if I stayed at MIT and the government said to me, Herb, find a way to make mathematics more accessible to the lower half of the population? Based on my norm, what's the lower half of the population? The lower half of my MIT class. And I give them something that they marvel at and the rest of the country laughs at me. Because it's not relevant to the students I'm supposed to be helping. See, we are the coaches. We are the coaches. If you're a lousy sailor and you don't want to look stupid, don't take out a 12-foot dinghy. Take out the Queen Mary. It's kind of hard to capsize that sucker. See, we're not dealing with the Queen Marys. I'm going to be careful how you use that word today, but we're dealing with what? Those vulnerable 6-foot dinghies. We're dealing with the kids who somehow slip through the cracks. We are dealing with the kids who need coaches. And so maybe part of the direction in which we should go in to answer these questions about what do we do next, what do we do to help children. And if you don't have specific questions, we can take a break and I can dedicate the next section to this. But I'd like to come through. Let me just briefly tell you what I have in mind. Then you can decide later how we should spend the rest of the time. Let me tell you in my own words what I call the guidelines that distinguish the teacher as coach from the teacher as player. Now, by the way, when I say this, I am not downplaying the importance of being a good player. I don't care what a great motivator a coach is. If he doesn't know the sport, I don't want him coaching my kid. So you've got to go to the YMCA or to the church group and use those values there. In other words, it's a necessary but not sufficient condition to assume that the person knows their sport before they become a coach. Is that once you become the coach, there's more to it than that. In other words, if I can't hit and have no concept of how to hit a baseball, I can't teach others. But if I'm a great hitter, does that mean I automatically can teach others how to hit? No, it's a completely different skill. So let me tell you what I think separates the teacher as coach from the teacher as player. I won't editorialize on it because I think it's time for a break anyway. Time goes by much slower for the people sitting on this side of the podium than for the person standing on this side. I say every so often somebody looks at their watch, they shake it to see if it's still going. When I look at my watch, somebody says, the calendar right back of you. So we're going to take a break in about 5 minutes, but let me just very quickly go over, just name drop the three things. The thing that a teacher as coach does is they specialize in making material relevant to the needs of the student. Not relevant to their own needs or the peer group needs, but relevant to the needs of the students. And to editorialize just for one sentence, it would be to say that the golden rule, as wonderful as it is the last thing that teachers should use. See, what does the golden rule say? Do unto others as you would have had others do unto you. Who does that make the focal point? You. I want to do do to them what I would have liked to have done to me. Who should be the focal point? The student. See, if the golden rule is what that is, the platinum rule would be, do unto others as others would have had done unto themselves. You might not know what that is, but it at least forces you to think from the other person's point of view. Not what would I have liked, what would this person have liked? And who best knows that? You or the student? The student. Does that mean you have to come down and cater to the student? No. Your role as a coach is to see where the student is and bring them up. As the old man said to me when I spoke in Boone, Iowa, I knew he was old because he called me young man. He was a grandfather of one of the graduates. He says, young man, you done brought the hay down to where the goats could reach it. I thought it was a great statement. Okay? But see, it's not that we go down to the student's level and stay there. It's you go down to find where the student is, and both of you come up to the level that we would like. See? Relevancy to the student, not to our own. Does it mean we exclude our own feelings? No. It's that we have to find out where the student is so that the thing becomes relevant. Second thing is, the teacher as coach develops teaching strategies and the like that allow the lower half of a class, of which there always has to be one, to compete more successfully with the upper half of the class. And here's the real kicker, but without impeding the progress of the upper half. How do you like that for a challenge? To teach the lower half to compete more successfully with the upper half, but without impeding the progress of the upper half. You could not do that in my day. That's where the technology comes in. You ever feel frustrated by saying, one kid's on chapter 1, he's way behind, another kid is already on chapter 7, and I'm supposed to be lecturing on chapter 4 today. How am I going to do it? See, could you do that in the old days? No. Can you do it today? Yes. You can have a videotape for the kid on chapter 1 to watch the tape on chapter 1. The kid on chapter 4 watches the tape on chapter 4. The kid on chapter 7 watches the tape on chapter 7. Does this minimize your role as a teacher? No. It changes the format, but it makes you even more important. You know, I hate to use the word facilitator because people think that is a negative word. I'm not a facilitator. I'm the real teacher. That's what facilitator means. You're making things easier for people to learn. You know what it is? It's an electronic return to the one-room classroom, the one-room school. How many episodes on The Little House on the Prairie centered around a first-grade reading group where some 6-year-old is having a problem and some 40-year-old illiterate adult is also in that first-grade reading group, and the two bond, and there's a whole hour story about that. Now, if that wasn't mastery learning, I don't know what was. When that 40-year-old is in the same group with the 6-year-old, are they saying you're being grouped by ability rather than chronologically? Yes. Now suppose you say, I don't think about self-paced mastery learning. I am the star of my classroom. Everybody's going to finish on time. And I'm not interested in appeasing these kids. I don't care how traditional you are. If a kid doesn't understand what you said on Monday, is there any hope they're going to understand it by Wednesday if they have no clue as to what to do? But suppose, as traditional as you are, you made a videotape of Monday's lecture. Can the kid watch it now as often as they want? And maybe, by watching it enough times, just like a ball player watching a videotape, looking for his mistakes, is it possible that between Monday and Wednesday, they'll find some answers that will make Wednesday's class more meaningful than it would have been otherwise? And I have colleagues say, yeah, but damn kids, they won't watch the tape. Who cares? It's their problem now, not mine. Remember that Salada tea bag thing? I learned more stuff on Salada tea bags. I actually went through college in 2 terms. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, Truman's and Eisenhower's. I entered Brandeis in 1949 and left MIT in 1958. And most of the good stuff I learned was from Salada tea bag slogans. And one of them says, it's better to have something you don't need than to need something you don't have. I think it's very, very nice. See, when I made that stuff available, did I do my job? Yes. If the student elected not to use it, was that the student's free choice? Yes. yes. Now, if the student would have used it and I didn't develop it, now is it my problem? Yes. You see, I believe that the way we give students responsibility is not by making them become masters of their life. I mean, their life is in shambles sometimes. The way you make them masters is you give them the option of how they can improve with no risk. And if they're not willing to take that option, then it's no longer your problem. That's what you want. You say to the kid, here's a chance for you with no risk involved to improve. And if you're not ready to take it now, good, come back in 10 years when you are. See, I have a different type of second-generation student now. When you say somebody's a second-generation community college student, don't you usually mean that maybe his parent or an older sibling came? My new definition is this is a guy, the same guy who came 10 years ago, but he wasn't ready then. And now he is. And he says, boy, I wish I had listened to you this way 10 years ago. No, he wasn't ready then. He needed that 10 years to believe he should have listened to me that way 10 years ago. It's another speech that we can talk about, but we'll do that later. Actually, I should say, as good as I am, I'm very rarely invited back, so. And the third ingredient, which is the most important of the three, especially, and this one becomes even more important as the student becomes more and more at risk, is the one that we make the classroom as much as possible an extended family situation for that student. That the classroom should become a haven where this person can escape from the hecticness of their day-to-day existence and be in a place where people believe in them and support them. Now, do we vary as people in terms of how much we're willing to give of ourselves? Sure we do. Isn't there a saying in lending money that says never lend more money than you can comfortably afford to lose? That way if the person doesn't pay you back, there's no great big harm done. Well, it's the same thing with ourselves. Never give more of yourself than you can comfortably afford to lose. But if you really think about it and soul search, do you believe that most of us can give a little bit more of ourselves than what we're given? You know what it takes? It takes high self-esteem. If you have low self-esteem, aren't you afraid that somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes? See, I'll have a kid come into me and say, I couldn't come to class today because my grandmother passed away. I said, well, I feel terrible about that, but don't worry about it. What does my office mate say? You really believe that crap? Probably the 8th time this year, his grandmother died. You know what my answer is? Who cares? If that kid is embarrassed enough to make up a story like that, there's hope. See, what I don't want is the guy to come in and say, I missed your class today, I'm going to miss it tomorrow, it sucks, and I don't even care what you say, I hate the way you teach. Now I know I've lost. Kids look for, see, kids, put yourself in this situation. You're positive that you can't make it, but you're too proud to quit. We have lots of kids like that. How many kids say, I go to Harvard, but I'm transferring next semester? None. How many say, I go to Bunker Hill Community College, but I'm transferring next semester? Almost every one of them. It's like you have to be embarrassed to be at the community college. Not later, but when you first come. Just feeling insecure. Why are you coming to Bunker Hill? Well, anybody can. I hear there's no standards there. Anybody can. They find out differently. That's not the point. They come to us. Are they scared of failing? Yes. What do you think they're looking for? They're looking for you to bail them out. Insult me so I can have an excuse to leave. Give me something that's impossible to do so I can have an excuse to leave. Fail me so I have an excuse to leave. See, I am known as the most permissive guy on my campus. And I scare the kids in a way they don't even realize. Because they can never blame anybody but themselves when they don't take advantage of my no-risk education for high-risk students. See, if one of my students says, I need 5 more minutes to finish this exam, I say, take an hour if you need it. Hell, if I'm gone, stay as long as you want and just lock the door after you when you leave. I don't care if he steals all the books in the office, that's what they're there for. God forbid they should steal a math book and study it. What do you think usually happens when I do that? They come back an hour later and they say to me, you know something, I guess I just didn't understand this. Once in a great while they do finish, in which case, where was the harm then? No. But what happens now when the kid says, They realize now it was their problem, not mine. What would that same kid have said if I didn't give him the extra 5 minutes and the extra hour? I could have got an A at that SOB and given me the extra 5 minutes. But if I have low self-esteem, I'm going to say, my God, what are these people who think that community college professors are dumb people teaching dumb kids? What are they going to think when they finally gave this kid more time? See, you have to have this feeling of feeling so good about yourself that no one can possibly take negative advantage of you. The commandment that says, love thy neighbor as thyself, is deadly if you don't love yourself. If you're suicidal, how do you help your neighbor like you help yourself? It's not good. You have to have the kind of self-esteem that says, anything that I do to help this kid is worth it. I do very permissive things. If a kid wants to take a test over again, I don't say no. I don't say the second grade counts. I say take it over and the higher grade counts. Where's the risk? There is none. Great. Who does the kid blame now if he doesn't take the test over again? Had nothing to lose. What he's saying is it wasn't important enough to me to get up an hour to take that test over again. Now, by the way, that's where my work is easier than yours. You see, it's very easy to make up an equal but different exam in math. It's not so easy in history. Also, it's very difficult in history, in this pragmatically oriented world, to tell a kid that he can't make it if he doesn't know the 5 major causes of the French Revolution. But you can trick him into thinking you can't make it if you don't know math. I've never seen a guy yet fail anything in life in business because he didn't know math. If you're rich enough, you buy a mathematician. You're poor, you rent one. If you're too poor, you don't, and you can't rent one, you have a friend show you how to do it. But nobody fails because they don't know math. And in fact, we use it negatively. If you say to a kid says to me, whoever uses fractions? I say, well, carpenters use them all the time. He says, big deal, I won't be a carpenter. Just scare him right out of it. These are the problems that we're facing. Does that mean that every kid that we have doesn't like math? No, but there are easy ones to teach. And even there's a challenge because what? They don't realize it, but the better they are in math, the more they're competing with a counterpart they don't even know yet, who's at a different campus. A campus they're going to transfer to in a year or 2 years or whatever it happens to be. And they are going to be competing then. See, what do we do for those students? You see, we're having a bimodal explosion at the community college level now. Our brighter students are brighter than ever. Our weaker students are weaker than ever. But it's not because the kids are getting worse. Here is the thing that I think is going to, this is the closing remark. It's like, I'm like a clergyman when he says finally. It don't mean right away finally, but this is finally. The thing I want you to keep in mind is that if you think we have bad students now, it's nothing compared to what we're going to find in the next few years. And the reason is not because kids are getting dumber, but because the kind of jobs that gave you upward mobility with a high school diploma have disappeared. You've already mentioned how certain kids don't pay attention in the classroom. It's because they don't want to be there. These are the kids who hated school, but 20 years ago, they said, if I can only make it through high school, I'll go to work at the bank, I'll work here, I'll work there. Those jobs are gone now. In my father's generation, it was the 6th grade. Hell, school sucks, I'll go to the factory. I got a strong back, I'll be loyal to the boss. They haven't made a human being that has a stronger back or is more loyal than a robot. Robots don't ask for time off with their family. They don't ask for Sundays off. They don't ask for this. They don't ask for that. Once in a while, they need a doctor because it hurts when they do square roots, whatever it happens to be. But basically, who needs this stuff anymore? Who needs good secretaries anymore? We'll just steal a good form letter off the internet, put in our own address labels, and we'll mail it all over the world. We make fun of kids for playing. I mean, why don't teachers make up the kind of problems that the kids can't find the answers to on the internet? Instead of blaming the kids for searching the internet. What are you supposed to do in life when you're faced with a problem? Solve it. And if the teacher is damn fool enough to give you a problem where the answer is already available on the internet, why should you not take advantage of that? How much ethics do we teach in school today? That's not important, right? Can we have a course in ethics? No. Make every single lecture 10% ethics so kids can't get away from it. Don't have a course called ethics that the kids memorize and then forget right after they get the A in it. Ethics is not a wrong thing. But if you can watch what big business is doing today, and now make fun of a kid for stealing something off the internet, there's hypocrisy there. If you want a kid not to use a calculator, because it's too easy to solve problems using a calculator, give him problems that you can't solve on the calculator, unless you understand the concept. Don't ask him what 3 plus 2 is, because he just presses the 3, the plus, the 2, and the equal sign. Ask him to fill in the blank if 3 plus blank equals 5. Now he enters the 3, the plus sign. He said, you gave me an old calculator. There's no blank on this one. You see, what does the kid have to do? Paraphrase. See, what is the real world? It's to take the knowledge that's available to you and apply it to problems that haven't been solved before, isn't it? And because we've failed at that, rather than say we haven't succeeded, we say we now have to teach critical thinking. Now, I may be too old to learn new tricks, but can anybody here tell me the difference between what's called critical thinking today and what we called education in my generation?
Thank you.
I don't know the difference. I was told ever since I was a kid, you have to learn to apply this stuff. Now they say, well, that's critical thinking. It's like the kid was amazed to find out he'd been speaking prose his whole life. Prose. I say, thank God for James Joyce. I found out I've been speaking stream of consciousness my whole life. I'm bilingual, American and profanity. But basically, this is where we're at, and I talk much too long, but I get excited. I'm 71 years old. This is my 47th year of teaching, and I get just as excited today as I did in the old days. The only difference is I know much more today than I did then, but I had the energy to implement the things I didn't know then. I don't have the energy to implement the things I do know now. It's been the trade-off in my life this way. And I feel like the basketball coach who's had successful teams for 25 years, he doesn't go saying, I wish they'd give me football to coach next year. I'm tired of basketball. You see, if you're really a coach, you recognize that the sport isn't just the game. It's the game and the players. And when the players change, the game changes. If you've been a high school basketball coach who's won the state championship for 20 consecutive years, and the shortest guy on your team during that 20 years was 6'7", and the 21st year you come out to practice, the tryouts, and the tallest guy is only 6'1", does that mean you retire? Does it mean you change your values? Do you change your work ethic? No. But is it possible you might reevaluate the slam dunk and the alley-oop? That's what's happening. We're not wrong as teachers. They've given us different players. And we have to be, what would you say, researchers enough in the classroom to solve that problem. Because they don't have that problem at the university. Are they going to have it 20 years from now? You bet they are. Because the public does not know how to make value judgments unless they see credentials. And if everybody in the world now has an associate's degree, how are they going to know which associate degree guys are smart and which ones aren't? They'll say, let's see which one of these guys gets a bachelor's degree. Now pretty soon everybody has bachelor's degrees. How do you know who those smart ones are? We'll see who gets a master's degree. You can't inflate a dime and hold the value of a dollar constant. It just doesn't work. Sooner or later, the problems that we're solving now are going to be the problems that the university faces. And the marriage that I see is that we come to the universities to find out what the state of the art is. We're too busy to know that. We're working with kids who are terribly at risk, even our best ones. And in exchange for that, we teach them methodology. We teach them humaneness. And be careful, humanitarian and humanism and humanist are not the same thing. Most of the Nazi war criminals, by definition, were humanists. They love fine paintings, they love wine, they love dogma. There's nothing in the definition of a humanist that says you have to like people. See, we need more humanitarians. As I was once invited to lecture at a Southern Baptist church in North Carolina. It's the only place I was ever introduced as an Israelite. Interesting. The sermon was entitled, Too Many Christians, Not Enough Christ-like People. So we have too many humanists, not enough humanitarians. We have too many talents and not enough teachers. See? And this is who we are. We are the backbone of the future of America. And I really sincerely believe that. We'll break over here. We can come back and specifically try to get back to address what we talked about before. I can go into more details of the teacher's coach, self-paced mastery learning. That's where I think the future lies, in having all these videotapes, CD-ROM, internet, that does nothing but increase the gap between the haves and the have-nots right now. Everybody has videotape. Not everybody has a computer at home. See, what happens with internet stuff is that the kid who comes from an affluent home has a computer at home, can do homework, can do all kinds of things, buy all kinds of software. The kid who comes from a poor, an indigent family only gets to practice when they're in school. It's like two teams playing for the football championship, and one team has access to every single training facility, and the other team shows up only for games. And they can't understand why the team that only shows up for games keeps losing. See, we are the support system for these kids, and we have to do whatever we can in our power to help them. And if that sounds permissive, well, that's just the way it is, I guess. And I don't see this as contradicting anything you may believe in. Can you all visualize that the things I said about the teacher as coach can fit into your scheme of things, no matter what your standards are? It's only when I tell you how to implement these things that I'm now preaching to you about the technologies. If you want to see this in a real vivid form, just fold your hands. I think this is very interesting. I learned this in a left brain, right brain seminar, and it doesn't mean anything to me except it's interesting. See, when I fold my hands, I have my left thumb over my right thumb, okay? Other people, when they fold their hands, have their right thumb over their left thumb. No, you can either fold your hands this way, or you can fold them this way. Whichever way you do it the opposite way. Not just the thumbs, the whole hand. You do it this way, or you do it this way. Now, how comfortable does the other way feel? Awful, doesn't it? How does it sound if I say to you, look guys, some people fold their hands this way, some people fold their hands this way. But since I'm more comfortable folding them this way, that's the way we're all going to do it from now on. That's how we teach sometimes. And by the way, if you think the folding your hands one is funny, do it with your arms. I can't even do it. Notice how you fold your arms. Now do it the opposite way. I spent 20 minutes trying to figure out what the opposite way is. It just feels completely unnatural. And this to me is the 1-minute lecture on cultural diversity. And what do we tend to do? We call it logical if the person's inane habit happens to agree with the way we do it. And illogical if it's the other way. Okay, but anyway, I thought that was a good place to take a break on. Let's break till about 3, and then whatever you'd like to do after that, if you decide